Stub what most people misunderstand about 5 types of disrespect you should never tolerate is that disrespect rarely announces itself. It doesn't walk through the door wearing a sign. It doesn't shout at you across a room. It whispers. It creeps. It wraps itself in humor, in "I was just joking," in silence, in small moments you almost talk yourself out of noticing. And here's what nobody tells you: the most dangerous disrespect is the kind you've learned to accept. Most people think disrespect means someone screaming in your face or insulting you in public. But the truth is, the disrespect that does the deepest damage is the kind that makes you feel crazy for even naming it. The kind that leaves you sitting alone at night thinking, was that real? Did that actually just happen? Maybe I'm being too sensitive. You're not too sensitive. You're too trained. Trained by years of people who benefited from your confusion. Here's what psychology actually tells us. When disrespect is subtle, your brain doesn't process it as a threat, it processes it as a mystery. And the human mind will chase a mystery. It will replay it, reframe it, excuse it, and eventually normalize it. That's not weakness. That's neuroscience. That's how you were built. But here's the shift that changes everything the moment you can name what's happening to you. Your brain stops treating it as a mystery and starts treating it as information. And information gives you power. Power gives you choice. And choice is to pull the one thing people who disrespect you never want you to have. So right now, we're going to name 5 specific types of disrespect precisely, clearly, and without apology. Not so you can walk around suspicious of everyone, but so that the next time it happens, something inside you doesn't flinch and go quiet. Something inside you recognizes it, because you cannot protect what you cannot identify. There's a specific kind of person you've met before. Maybe you're thinking of them right now. They make a comment that lands wrong. It stings. Something inside you tightens. And before you can even process what just happened, they're already laughing. The room is laughing. And suddenly, the only person not laughing is you. So you have 2 choices in that moment. Laugh along and betray yourself, or react honestly and become the problem. That's not an accident. That's a trap. And it was built specifically for you. This is what psychologists call a double bind a situation designed so. That no matter what you do, you lose. If you laugh, you've just given someone permission to do it again. You've told them, without words, that this is acceptable, that you can be used as a punchline whenever they need one. And if you speak up, suddenly you're the one with the issue. You're too serious. You can't take a joke. You're making things awkward. The original wound disappears, and your reaction becomes the headline. This is not humor. This is control wearing a costume. Real humor brings people together. It creates safety. It punches at ideas, at situations, at shared experiences. What we're talking about here does the opposite. It singles someone out. It diminishes them, and then it hides behind laughter so it cannot be held accountable. Pay attention to how you feel after someone makes a joke about you. Not during, because during, your brain is still catching up, still trying to decide if you're allowed to be hurt. Pay attention to after, when you're alone, when the noise is gone. If there's a quiet heaviness sitting in your chest, trust that. That heaviness is information. That's your nervous system telling you something your conscious mind was too busy managing to acknowledge in the moment. Now here's something that matters deeply. People who genuinely care about you, they notice when a joke lands wrong. They read your face. They check in. They say, "Hey, I'm sorry, that came out wrong." They repair. Because to them, your comfort matters more than their punchline. But the person using humor as disrespect doesn't repair. They escalate. They double down. They say, "You're so sensitive," or "I was just joking, relax." And what they're doing in that moment, consciously or not, is teaching you that your feelings are the problem, that your discomfort is the disruption, that you are too much. Over time, if you stay around that long enough, you start to believe it. You start editing yourself before you speak. You start managing their comfort at the expense of your own. You start laughing at things that hurt you just to keep the peace. And the version of you that walks out of that relationship, that friendship, that workplace is quieter than the version that walked in. That's the real cost, not the joke itself, the slow erosion of your voice. So here's what you need to do. You don't need to explode. You don't need to deliver a speech. You don't need to convince them that what they did was wrong, because people who use humor this way, they counted on you not to say anything. All you need to do is stop performing comfort you don't feel. Stop laughing when you're not laughing on the inside. Let the silence exist. Let the awkwardness breathe, because your discomfort, when you stop hiding it, becomes the mirror they cannot look away from. You are not responsible for making the person who hurt you feel comfortable about hurting you. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with being tired. It is not the exhaustion that comes from working long hours or not sleeping enough. It's deeper than that. It lives somewhere behind your eyes. It settles in your shoulders. It follows you home and sits with you at the dinner table. It's the exhaustion of spending years trying to be heard by someone who has already decided not to listen. Dismissal is one of the most psychologically damaging forms of disrespect because it attacks something fundamental, your sense of reality. When someone consistently minimizes what you feel, talks over what you think, or treats your concerns like background noise, they're not just being rude. They are slowly teaching you that your inner world doesn't matter. And if that lesson gets repeated enough times by someone close enough to you, you start teaching it to yourself. That's the moment it becomes dangerous. Think about what happens inside you when you try to express something real, something vulnerable, something that actually matters to you, and the person across from you changes the subject, or gives you a one-word response, or immediately redirects the conversation back to themselves. There's a split second where something in you deflates, where the thing you were about to say quietly retreats, and you make a mental note, without even realizing it, don't go there again. Do that enough times and you stop going anywhere real at all. This is how dismissal operates. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be cruel. It just needs to be consistent, because consistency is what trains behavior. And when someone consistently responds to your depth with disinterest, your mind learns the only way to survive in that relationship is to stay shallow, to stay surface level, to talk about weather and schedules and everything except the things that are actually alive inside you. And here is what makes this so hard to name. The person dismissing you often looks completely normal. They're not yelling. They're not insulting you. From the it's a side, the relationship looks fine. But because you've stopped bringing your real self to it. Because you've started rehearsing what you're going to say before you say it, trying to make it small enough, palatable enough, simple enough that maybe this time they'll actually engage. You shouldn't have to make yourself smaller to be heard by someone who claims to care about you. Here's something worth sitting with. In healthy relationships, people lean in when you speak. Not every single time everyone gets distracted. Everyone has bad days. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a pattern, a consistent, repeated pattern of your words landing and disappearing like stones dropped into still water. No ripple, no response, no recognition that what you said actually meant something. That pattern is a message, and the message is, you don't matter enough here. Now, some people dismiss others not out of malice, but out of emotional limitation. They were never taught to hold space for someone else. They don't know how to sit with discomfort that isn't their own. That might explain it, but it does not excuse it, and it does not mean you are required to keep pouring yourself into a space that never fills. You are allowed to need to be heard. That is not neediness. That is not weakness. That is one of the most basic human requirements there is. Connection, recognition, the simple experience of saying something true and having another person receive it. Stop measuring your worth by whether someone who cannot listen finally listens. The right people will not make you fight for the floor. They will make room for you before you even ask. There is a silence that hurts more than any argument ever could. Not the silence after a fight. Not the silence of a room with no one in it. The silence of being deliberately left out. Of decisions being made around you. Of conversations happening without you. Of doors closing just before you. Reach them. That silence has a specific weight to it. And if you felt it, you know exactly what it does to a person. Exclusion is ancient. Long before anyone had words for psychological damage, human beings understood instinctively that being cast out from the group was one of the most threatening experiences possible. Your brain is still wired that way, which means when someone excludes you deliberately, they are not just being inconsiderate. They are triggering something primal, something. Stub lives far beneath logic, and that's precisely why it hurts in a way that's almost impossible to explain to someone who hasn't felt it. You find out about the meeting after it happened. You discover the decision was made without your input. You notice the invitation that never came, and there's this strange moment where you have to decide whether to say something or absorb it quietly. Most people absorb it, because saying something means admitting it hurt, and admitting it hurt means giving the other person a window into just how much their actions affected you. So you stay quiet, and they learn they can do it again. Here is what separates accidental exclusion from deliberate exclusion, and this distinction matters enormously. Accidents come with repair. Someone who genuinely forgot to include you genuinely feels it when they realize. They reach out. They explain. They make sure it doesn't define the relationship. Deliberate exclusion doesn't do any of that. Deliberate exclusion is followed by indifference, sometimes even by a casual mention of the very thing you were left out of, delivered without apology, almost as if they want you to know. Because sometimes they do want you to know. That's the point. Deliberate exclusion is a power move. It communicates something that the person delivering it would never say out loud. It says you are not important enough to include. Your perspective doesn't change outcomes here. Your presence is optional. And the cruelest part is stubbled weakness. It's a stubbled weak without ever giving you something concrete enough to confront. There's no insult on record, no raised voice, just an absence. And absences are extraordinarily difficult to argue against. This is why it works so well on people with high emotional intelligence. Because you'll spend more time questioning yourself than questioning them. You'll wonder if you're reading too much into it. You'll construct generous explanations for why it happened. You'll give benefit of the doubt that was never extended to you. And while you're busy doing all of that internal work, the pattern continues. Pay attention to patterns. One instance of exclusion can be an oversight. 2 can be coincidence. 3 is communication. What that pattern is communicating is that someone in your life has made a quiet decision about your value. And rather than telling you directly which would require honesty and courage, they are showing you through omission, through closed doors, through your name being absent from conversations where it should have appeared. You deserve to be in the room, not because you demand it, not because you force your way in, but because the people around you recognize that the room is better with you in it, that your thinking adds something, that your presence matters beyond what you can contribute or produce. Any relationship, professional, personal, or otherwise, where you are consistently on the outside looking in, is a relationship. Spore that has already told you everything you need to know. Stop knocking on doors that were never meant to open for you. Find the ones that are already open. Most people have experienced this and filed it away under something they couldn't quite name. There's someone in your life who is warm when they need something, attentive when they want something, present, engaged, charming, even right up until the moment their need is met. And then, almost like a switch flips, the warmth disappears. The texts slow down, the eye contact changes, the energy shifts, and you're left standing in the aftermath of someone's attention wondering what you did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You just stopped being useful. This is conditional respect, and it is one of the most quietly devastating dynamics a human being can find themselves inside of, because it is specifically designed, again, consciously or not, to keep you chasing, to keep you performing, to keep you working for something that should have been given to you freely from the beginning. Here is what makes it so psychologically complex. When someone treats you well sometimes, your brain doesn't learn to distrust them. It learns to chase the pattern. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called variable reward, the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. When a reward is unpredictable, when it comes and goes without a clear reason, the brain becomes more fixated on obtaining it, not less. So the person who respects you, see conditionally, is whether they know it or not, creating the perfect conditions for you to work harder, try more, and tolerate more than you ever should. You're not weak for falling into this. You're human. Your brain was built for it. But now that you can see it, let's look at it clearly. Think about the people in your life who seem genuinely glad to see you, not glad because they need a favor, not engaged because they're in the middle of a difficult situation and you're useful right now. Just glad because you walked into the room, because your name came up, because you exist in their life. That gladness doesn't come with conditions attached. It doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't evaporate the moment the transaction is complete. That is what real respect feels like. And once you know what it feels like, conditional respect becomes impossible to mistake for the real thing. Now, here is something important to understand about the people who operate this way. Many of them are sitting somewhere calculating how to use you. Many of them genuinely believe they care about you in the moments when they're demonstrating it. But caring about someone only when it's convenient is not care. It's utility. And being someone's utility, being the person they come to when the world gets hard and disappear from when it gets easy, that is not a relationship. That is a resource arrangement dressed in the language of connection. And you deserve more than that. Watch what people do in the moments when they need nothing from you. That is the most honest version of how they see you. When there is no favor to ask, no crisis to solve, no comfort to extract, do they still show up? Do they still reach out? Do they still treat you with the same warmth they had when they were sitting across from you needing something? That question will tell you more about a relationship than years of good moments ever could. Because good moments are easy. Anyone can be kind when kindness costs. Stem nothing. The real measure of how someone regards you is what they give when there's nothing to gain. How they speak to you when you have nothing to offer. Whether their respect for you survives the moment their need disappears. You are not a resource. You are not a support system waiting to be activated. You are not someone to be picked up and put down based on someone else's season of need. Respect that disappears when you stop being useful was never respect at all. It was strategy with a smile on its face. There is something deeply disorienting about telling someone what you need and watching them ignore it, not misunderstand it, not forget it once in a distracted moment. Ignore it, repeatedly, consistently, with full knowledge of what you said and full awareness of what they're doing. That experience of being heard and still not being respected does something to a person over time. It makes you question whether your needs are reasonable, whether you're asking for too much. Whether the problem is the boundary itself or the person who set it. It's never the boundary. It's always the person who refuses to honor it. Let's talk about what a boundary actually is, because the word has been used so often it has started to lose its shape. A boundary is not a wall. It is not aggression. It is not an ultimatum designed to control someone else. A boundary is simply a statement of what you need in order to feel safe, respected, and whole inside a relationship. It is the most honest thing you can offer another person, a clear, direct map of where you end and where they begin. And when someone repeatedly crosses that line, they are not confused about where it is. They know exactly where it is. That's precisely why they keep testing it. This is the part that most people find hardest to accept. We want to believe that boundary violations come from misunderstanding, that if we just explain it better, more clearly, more calmly, more patiently this time, we explain again. We soften the language. We apologize for having the boundary in the first place. We make it smaller and easier to digest, hoping that version will finally be respected. But here is the truth that changes everything. People who violate your boundaries repeatedly are not doing so because they don't understand them. They are doing so because they have learned there are no real consequences for crossing them. Every time you re-explain without changing anything, you are teaching them that explanation is the consequence, and explanation costs them nothing. Boundaries without consequences are not boundaries. They are suggestions, and some people will ignore a suggestion every single time. Think about the specific feeling that arrives when someone crosses a line you've already clearly drawn. There's a flash of something: anger, hurt, disbelief, followed almost immediately by a familiar internal negotiation. Maybe this time was different. Maybe I wasn't clear. Enough. Maybe I should let this one go. That negotiation is not your conscience talking. That is conditioning. That is what happens to a person who has spent too long around someone who benefits from their flexibility. Your first response, that flash, was the honest one. Trust it. Now here's something that matters. Not everyone who crosses a boundary is doing it maliciously. Some people genuinely have poor awareness. Some were raised in environments where boundaries didn't exist and therefore never learned to recognize them. That context is worth understanding. But understanding someone's history is not the same as accepting their behavior. You can have compassion for why someone is the way they are and still decide that the way they are is not something you're willing to absorb. Compassion and self-protection are not opposites. You can hold both at the same time. The people who truly respect you will not make you feel guilty for having needs. They will not push back against you. Limits, as though your limits are an inconvenience to manage. They will not wear you down through repetition until you abandon the boundary yourself just to end the tension. They will simply respect it, quietly, naturally. Because to them, your comfort is not an obstacle. It is a priority. You do not need to endlessly justify what you need. You do not need to earn the right to your own limits. And the moment someone makes you feel like you do that is the moment they have told you exactly who they are. Believe them.